Terrified of Dying, DXM with CPM by Aneurysm Punk. Just last weekend, I bought 3 boxes of Coricidin Cold and Cough. In the small town that I live in, we have a carnival type thing called the Fall Festival. It has a couple rides, which are the same every year. Food stand, games, same every year also. It's not all that great, except everyone goes, tokes up, gets drunk, and just has fun. About 7 p.m., I took 12 Coricidin pills, and Stacy took the 5 that I'd left from the package. We met up with some friends, Nick, Jay, Ben, and Twiggy. We all went into a restaurant and we just sitting in the smoking section, smoking cigarettes and talking. I began to feel very hot, and my vision was kind of shaky. It was kicking in really strong, and it only had been 45 minutes to an hour. For some reason, whenever I take Triple C, it sometimes takes up to 2 hours to kick in. I had a really good trip that night, feeling really drunk, stoned, and I just had a great time stumbling around and being stupid. The next day, we went up to the Fall Festival again, and at about 8 p.m., I downed 16 Coricidin pills, a whole box. Not sure how many mgs that is. And Stacy took 10. Again, we went to the same restaurant and were talking with some friends, Emily, Amanda, Curtis, and Megan. And within 15 minutes, I felt like I was going blind. Everything kept fading in and out, sometimes into black, sometimes into white, sometimes into even orange and pink. I started to feel like I was going to puke, and I started sweating like a pig. Stacy later told me I was saying someone was burning my skin. I went outside and sat against the wall until Stacy finished eating. I was tripping hardcore within 30 minutes. I couldn't walk. I had to put my arm around Stacy, and I still pretty much dragged my feet. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt like it was shaking my whole body. Even my head was throbbing. My eyes were huge and looked like they were about to pop out of my head. I turned a pale, sickly white color, and everyone commented on how I looked like shit and looked really sick. I somehow convinced Stacy I wanted to ride the octopus, so we waited in line. When we got on the ride, I knew it was a mistake. I didn't feel like I was going to puke. I just had this tight, squeezing feeling throughout my whole body. And my heart was still pounding. The ride started going, and at first it was really cool, because it seemed to me that the ride was going slow, and everything in the background was just a mixture of bright colors. Then I saw a bright light flash. At first it looked like a lightning bolt, but then it opened up like it was devouring the entire sky, and I felt like I was being pulled up to heaven. I could then see my family, the people I loved, and times I remembered from my life. I just remember feeling my life was over, and I was crying, not just crying, screaming, no, no, no. I didn't want to go. I just remember that feeling. It was like I could feel my body shutting down. I felt like a giant living computer, and God had pressed my off button, and the screen was turning black. It was nothing like I have ever felt before. It was extreme. I really imagined that I was holding on to my body, the little cart of the ride, trying to keep myself breathing, telling God in my head that I didn't want to go, that it wasn't my time. I finally convinced God I had to stay, and the light faded away, and I was back, swinging around in circles, moving up and down, with Stacy next to me, cracking up at something. I stared straight ahead for the rest of the ride, not moving at all. I was in shock for 10 minutes after we got off the ride. Stacy was almost in tears worrying about me, trying to get me to snap out of it. I finally managed to say God came for me, but I told him it wasn't my time, in a weird, slurred voice. She got scared and said she was taking me home. It was around 9 then, and I convinced her that I was having fun and wanted to stay. She practically carried me up to the water fountain so we could talk to all of our pothead, druggy, skater, punk friends, because the fountain is where they all hang out. I sat on the steps, not talking at all. My heart was still pounding through my entire body, beating so hard it made my legs shake. It felt like I was having a seizure. A friend of mine, Dan, sat down next to me and told me I didn't look so good, and wondered what I was on. I told him Coricidin in a low, devilish voice, as he later tells me. I was telling total strangers about my experience on the octopus. The weird thing is, I didn't think it was real. None of it. I could see myself talking to all these people like I was starring in a movie or dreaming. I felt like I was another person, staring at this cracked out blonde girl with huge brown eyes and a pale, sickly face. I started to get really bad and paranoid. Every time I turned my head, I felt like my soul had been left behind, like I was nothing but a pair of invisible eyes. It was so strange. I even had to tap Stacy on the shoulder a couple times and ask her if she could see me. That's when she made me leave. She carried me to a friend Eric's house, so I could lay down and rest. I don't remember any of the walk to Eric's. I stumbled inside and fell on his bed. Eric used to work at a hospital, so he checked my pulse and said it was way above normal. He told me I needed to settle down before my heart exploded. I was so terrified of dying, I laid still on his bed, other than my legs shaking and my heart pounding so hard and fast it trembled my entire body. I laid on his bed, staring straight ahead for 3 hours straight. I remember thinking, you have a couple more minutes to live. Your heart is giving out, right about. Eric and Stacy are watching something on TV and had a countdown from 10 on it. When it got to 1, I held my breath, expecting to see the white light again, but I didn't. I knew that I had to hold on, settle down, and be strong. My legs finally stopped shaking after hours and I was finally coming down. My vision was still really blurry, and I was afraid if I moved even the lightest bit, my heart would explode. It was the most terrifying experience in my life. I have the urge to do choreocean again, but I never want to trip like that. Ever again. Mom, DXM and Fentanyl by Misty. I am writing to express my freedom of speech, to inform and educate. On July 16th, 2003, I found my 18-year-old son in his bed. He had died in his sleep. Much to my shock after reading his computer entries, he and his friends had been experimenting with many of the drugs that he found listed on this website, but DXM appeared to be his drug of choice. It appears through the information left behind on his computer and the autopsy report that on the night that he died, he had mixed DXM and fentanyl. This was a talented and intelligent young man with many artistic gifts, but with many questions about life. I feel that he had carefully studied and calculated, but there are no guarantees. I want other kids to know that a fatal outcome is a very real possibility. It may happen the first time or after several successful and uncomplicated trips. There were no warning signs, no chances to help. I grieve every day for this very tragic loss and want others to know that their choices affect them and the people who love them. Overdosed in School, DXM by Morgan. I've done choreocean many times before, and I only had one bad trip on 20 pills. It felt like I was seriously dying and I thought I was too cool. I did it for about 2 months straight and started getting really bored of it, so I thought I would do a little something stronger. I found this person who sells DXM and they get it straight from the government. So it was my second time doing it and I was in school suspension with no work, so I thought I might do it so I wouldn't be so bored and not having anything to do. So I put it down my throat and about 45 minutes later I started tripping and feeling really good. Like, yeah, I can't get any better than this. So it was lunchtime and I tried to eat, but I could only get down 2 fries and threw my lunch away. That's when I started feeling really pukey and I laid my head down on my desk, and that's when I started puking all over the floor and all over my desk. The teacher had sent someone to come and get me to the nurse's office, and I can only remember a little bit about what happened. I remember teachers asking me, "What did you take, Morgan? And what are you on?" And I only told them I was real sick, and next thing I knew, I'm in the ambulance. I remember laying in the ambulance and them asking me why I'm crying, and are you in pain? I couldn't even talk, I was so fucked up. They had to strap me down because I was shaking so bad, and I felt like I was dying or something because it felt like I was going into these warp zones or different worlds. I remember getting lifted off the stretcher and onto a hospital bed when we had arrived there. I remember screaming, "Daddy, I love you," and "Daddy, don't leave me. I'm so sorry, Daddy," and flipped out when he tried to leave the room. My stomach was almost pumped, and the doctor said I almost went into a coma. I don't think I have ever been any scared in my whole life. To this day, I won't ever touch any drug except for weed, and I know that won't kill me. I'm too young to die. I'm only 16 and my whole life in front of me. The person I got the DXM from must have laced it because when the doctor came back with my piss test, he said I was tested positive for PCP. And I don't know how because I never tried it before. After about 6 hours in the hospital, I finally started to come around and the doctor said I was alright to go home. And this is a story about how I overdosed in school.